Although not very recommended, it is possible to actually edit the commands of a macro. Now at the moment you've been recording a macro and saving those macros and potentially triggering those macros with a keyboard shortcut. Now it may be that you wish to edit a particular macro, and if the edits are, well, straightforward and easy, then we can edit the macro. If they are not so straightforward, then it will be easier to actually delete that macro and re-record it. So let's have a look at how we can access the code behind each macro. Well, firstly, you need to either open the file if the macro is in a file. If it's in the global template, then you just need a file, open a new document. Let's have a look at the project with macro. We go to our macros on the View ribbon and choose View Macros. I can then see the macro in this particular project file, which is the Insert Meeting one, and the Format Sheet one, which is in the global template. If I want to edit either of these, so let's assume I want to edit the Insert Meeting, I select it and then click Edit. Now this will take us into the Visual Basic Editor. And we can see here that all macros start sub, name of the macro, and then end sub. And every line between the beginning and the end is then an action. Now, sometimes those actions are easy to read, such as the first one, Insert Task. That makes sense, we want to insert a task. And sometimes they're not so easy to read, such as Select Task Field, Row 0, Column Predecessors, which just means we've selected the predecessors column. So when we've recorded it, that's recorded as tabbing across. Now I would recommend that the only bits you actually ever edit are any text elements. Now text elements will begin here where it says value. So anything that is value we can edit and be fairly sure we're not going to break the macro. At the moment, this macro will insert a 2-hour task called meeting. Now, if I wanted to change that to review meeting, I would simply change the text there within the speech marks. And potentially I want to change the duration to 3 hours. I've now essentially edited the macro. Now there's no need to save or anything like that. We just close the Visual Basic Editor. So the big red cross takes us back to our project. And let's see what happens when we run our macro. So view macro, insert meeting and run. And we see we get a meeting called review meeting that is 3 hours long. So I've been able to edit the macro, but I've only edited values of items. So I would always recommend that that's all that you do until you're comfortable with the Visual Basic. So I could do the same with the other one, view macros, format sheet, edit. Here I've got Arial, size, and color, which is a VB color reference that I wouldn't even think or dare to edit because we don't know what color we'll end up with. And then the last one is a select task field, just telling us that we'll go to row 1 and select the indicators column. Now this particular macro also has a comment. You can see that line there is in green. There's a single apostrophe at the front. That's just a comment, so that's not an action. That's a comment within the macro to help whoever comes and edits it to explain what it does. Now, if I wanted to change my mind about that 10, make it a 12 point, and because it's in speech marks, I can quite easily make that change and know I'm not going to break anything. Again, we just red cross to close, and let's now try running that particular macro. So macros, view macro, format the sheet and run. And you'll see that we now, if we go to the task ribbon, see we've gone to Arial 12, so not Arial 10. So I've managed to actually edit successfully, because they've still worked, both of our macros, the format one and the insert meeting. I could, if I really wanted to get very, very clever, go to our macros, view macros, this particular one and edit. Will take me into the Visual Basic Editor. Let's copy the whole of that macro code, come down a little bit and paste. And you can see that the editor puts a horizontal line in for me. This needs to have a different name, so I'm going to call it Insert Meeting 4H. And let's make it a 4-hour meeting. The duration is 4H, and the meeting is not a review meeting, but an exam. So that's completely different. It is a new macro. I haven't had to record this. I've effectively copied and pasted a previous one. Let's close the editor, come back to my macros list, and we see that my new copy and pasted macro, not one that I've recorded, now exists. And if we run it, we get an exam that's going to last 4 hours. So I've just taken our ability to edit macros that little step further and edited by copying and pasting the whole macro. Remember that if you do that, it must have a unique name. So it's different to that one. And its name must not have spaces within it. I would also still run the same caveat of only changing values within speech marks, so that you're not actually changing the steps of the macro too greatly that it will then cause it to crash. Now, if you're not quite ready or wanting to edit macros, then you will certainly need to delete them if it does the wrong thing, so that you can get rid of the macro and then re-record the correct one. Deleting a macro is very straightforward. We come back to this same dialog box, so the macros dialog box. Choose the macro you no longer wish to have. So let's say this insert meeting 4 hours, and there's a delete button. Delete. Do you want to delete insert meeting 4H? I do. And it's gone. So there's no getting that back now. It has gone and it's been removed from the Visual Basic editor. So with these steps, you've taken your first walk along the path of programming. Nice easy steps, very easy. Edit, make a few changes, see if it works. The delete option, and even the ability to copy and paste a whole macro set of code to the sub to the end sub and make a few changes.